The numbers do the talking.
I hate that.
Why do you hate it so much?
All right, guys, we're going to get into some pretty heavy stuff. In lieu of the credit, take the discount.
Not in my opinion. You're preaching to the choir. Like,
buy the house for $970. We're going to talk about some math, but we're not going to put all these equations up on the screen.
Yeah.
We're going to get into this conversation about this loan program, 2-1 buy down. The root of it is we don't like to oversimplify things that sound like marry the house and date the rate and really mean buy a house with us now, always. What I notice is the closer you get to the point of decision and like in this process, you want these high level things. If you're like, oh, I'm going to move to Hawaii in 3 years, then we may lose you. So what I'm going to do is at the end, we're going to do a quick hit. We're going to do a quick fire round of where Jodie's from versus where I'm from and give you some of that normal moving to Hawaii knowledge. Come and connect with us, coreteamhawaii.com. We'll route you straight to lender, or you can come straight to us and then go to lender, whichever way. Connect with us, and we'll get into the thick of those questions on a consult. We were talking yesterday about 2-1 buy down.
yes.
If there's two hills, I lean more towards another hill for sure.
Yeah.
And you tend to lean the other way, so we
Right.
stopped and we said, let's argue on camera. I figured this conversation is going to take the course of kind of should you rent or should you buy? Also, the market, it's a weird market where the 2-1 buy down might not even be a relevant thing in a month, couple weeks. So you guys know me from the channel. You may have, some of you probably already seen Jodie from Pacific Rim Mortgage. Jodie's our primary lender. And I was just thinking about this earlier because we were talking about on one lender versus the other. And some clients are more like me, like really dominant and compliant and want to look at all the numbers, and some whatever. What I would offer you is I've already done the work for you. Like, I am unapologetic with my partners, whether it be Mahe or Jodie. Like, hey, my clients require the best rates, if not the absolute very best, like within smidgens of it. Mm-hmm. So if we're operating anywhere, and usually the very best.
Yeah.
And if we're operating anywhere outside of that, then you can't be my primary partner. So these conversations have happened a long time ago and have already and are maintained. And so I've done the vetting for you. And every time we have a situation, with rare exceptions, right? Like, a certain portfolio loan or there are exceptions where it's just the client has a better, situation somewhere else. And that's what we do. Mm-hmm. So other than that, like aside from that, 2-1 buy down. Jodie and I were talking yesterday. And so yesterday our teams did a training about rent versus buy, math and principles and emotions. Following that, later in the afternoon, we talked about the 2-1 buy down. Mm-hmm. So the 2-1 buy down, correct me if I'm wrong, basically the seller in a buyer's market or in a buyer's leveraged situation, because the whole market isn't really one or the other right now.
Correct.
It's kind of buyer's market for this house and seller's market for that house.
Exactly.
But in a situation where buyer has leverage, the buyer is writing the contract to say, seller, give me equivalent of 3 points. And then that gets passed on to the lender. 3 points in credit and has to come from the seller. And then for the first year, they're paying equivalent to a 2-point buy down. For the second year, equivalent to a 1-point buy down. And then come the third year or the 25th payment or whatever, they're at the normal rate. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's a temporary buy down. So the reason it's even within the realm of possibility to be paying on, let's use a VA example, paying on a 3.625 for the first year, or paying on a 4.625 for the second year, and then 5.625 for the third year and on. You couldn't say like, I like the idea of the temporary buy down, but I have money and I don't care about the seller. Like, I'll just buy down to a 3.625.
You can't do that, right?
You can't do it.
Because
so it's a temporary buy down.
It's complicated math, but there's only so much buy down that could happen for a situation, right? Mm-hmm. I've gone over it and I don't own that information like I do some stuff, but I know there's a limit at which you can buy down.
Right.
Yeah,
there's a limit and there's a floor.
A floor for total closing costs.
Well, there's a ceiling for total closing costs.
Yeah.
But there's a floor rate for rates. Like,
I can't buy down to zero.
Like even a millionaire, right? Even someone that's like, money, it means nothing to me, and it's principle based. I just want a 3.5% or even 4.5 for that matter. Right now, you cannot do a complete buy down and pay X amount of dollars to just be locked in at that rate.
Yeah.
So the lenders have come up with this in-between product where the buyer gets to pay temporary low for the first year and for the second year, and seller pays for it.
Okay. So we may bring up some of this math, but in lieu of that, and in lieu of us being near the whiteboard, because we got this cool background now, let's get into why we started to disagree. And I think I know, like, you see my point.
Yeah.
I see your point. What the root of my antagonizing is agents abroad tend to go on these Instagram trends.
Right.
And so they're like, marry the house and date the rate. And I'm like, ugh. Like, principally I understand what you're saying. When a billion realtors are saying it, or 4 million in the US, whatever, it starts to sound salesy. So, and it's not proving a higher level of sophistication. So if you're saying buy the house now and you can refi later, which is marry the house and date the rate, I prefer a more elaborate, sophisticated way to talk about that.
Right.
Because playing with people's $1 million investment should only be reduced to like one-liners if you understand the rest. And so the whole 2-1 buy down thing, I think a lot of agents are missing the point that if you do a 2-1 buy down, so let's say it's a $30,000 credit. What would that be? About $1 million house?
Yeah.
Right? Roughly $1 million house, $30,000 credit. And let's say it's just established the house is worth $1 million. I mean, 2 appraisers will appraise differently. These things, like, let's just say it's objectively $1 million house and you can get a $30,000 credit. If you're afraid of the payment, the base, like the real payment that's going to happen in 25 months or whatever, in 2 years basically, and that payment is going to be $6,000 a month or $5,000 a month, depending on down payment or whatever. And you're like, shoot, we can't make that. But if we get this 2-1 buy down, what would the first year payment be? Rough, just throwing numbers out.
It would be like 900 less or like 1,000 less.
So, okay, so the first year is going to be 4,000 instead of 5,000. And the second year will be 4,500, which we can still swing. But when we get to 5,000, we're squeezing our butts. Don't buy the house then. If you can't afford 5,000, don't buy the house. And then if you can afford 5,000, then take the regular payment from today. Take the $30,000 discount on the house instead. So this is the root of it. In lieu of the credit, take the discount. Buy the house for $970. Lock in that $30,000 equity. And then one day when you exit, which on average is what, 7-9 years, for a lot of people in Hawaii less because they're transitional.
Right. It might be more.
You
like
will
4.
realize that $30,000. Now, in the meantime, you would have had higher payments, and so that $30,000 get eaten away a bit. For the really highly analytical people, I get that. But you're locking in $30,000 in equity. There's no promise to me that if you make a $4,000 payment for the next 12 months, you're not going to spend it on candy bars in Disneyland anyway.
There's no promise.
And so you're locking in $30,000 of equity for all intents and purposes. You have to live with this $5,000 payment. Because what if you can't refi in the next 2 years?
Right.
What if the interest rates aren't down to 4% or whatever in the next 2 years? You've committed to a payment that you know you can make, and you've locked in equity. So I'd much rather coach you to take the discount on the house versus the 2-1 buy down. But Jodie brings up some good points why she's like, yeah, maybe. But I see more merit in the other side than you do, Derek. We've done 2-1 buy down, so it's not that I'm totally against them.
Yeah.
I think in terms of wealth, not payments. And I want you to think in terms of wealth, not payments. So I hope that in our 60 days together that I shift your paradigm a little bit if you're not already there. So why are you not as staunch on my method as I am?
Because it's locking in that savings in the first 24 months. That's why. I mean, so for someone that is going to, everyone's going to have life changes coming up in the future. And so at the end of the day, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. Like, I'm the first person let's talk about affordability before committing to anything or talking any more strategy. So we would never put you in a position where we know you're stretching, and if you're unable to refinance in that by the third year, that now all of a sudden you can't afford the payment. Like, I don't think any of our buyers would ever fall into that position, right? So because we spend so much time on understanding qualifications, understanding personal budgets, like understanding your net income and all this stuff, right? And building wealth. And part of building wealth is also like a mindset shift in terms of like need it, want it, like it, love it. That whole concept, right?
Okay.
So that comes along with taking this step into wealth building when you're buying a house, most people that are buying a house are making a sacrifice anyways.
Yeah.
Right? So we're talking about all of these bigger picture type of concepts with them to make sure that they realize whether or not they are in this position to be prepared for the third year. But when you compare being able to save $12,000 in the first year and then another $6,000 in the second year, and then knowing that, yes, the strategy is and probability tells us that rates will go down and I will be able to refinance, that's the strategy, that's the expectation, and that's the hope. But worst case scenario, if it doesn't happen, then you just got to be able to wait. At the end of the day, when you compare the amortization schedule, you've already earned most of that differential back in the first 24 months. So really, when you're talking
assuming you were diligent, like took it, saved it every month, put it in an investment account.
Well, by paying less.
Assuming you did that. Most people,
when
$1,000 goes into their pocket.
It's not assuming you did that. It's you're paying less.
You're paying less,
so
but that money is
gain.
fleeting.
It's a realized gain.
It's a realized gain, but then it's fleeting. We know that human behavior, most people aren't Warren Buffett, who is worth $1 billion and then drives a 98 Corolla. That money's fleeting. And so the whole idea, there's an argument that your primary residence, your house, is not an asset. I understand what they're saying, and depending on the conversation, I agree. But what we know is, what I would give ourselves to be a little higher level in this game, is that most people are better being locked into this forced investment, this forced savings account of owning a house.
100%.
So what we're saying is they're better off being forced to put into their investment, which would be more on my side, than on your side where they get $1,000 a month extra, and then it goes to Snickers bars and Disneyland. So I think they end up being wealthier in 5 years if they take the $30,000 discount and the higher payment than if they have this fleeting $12,000 savings.
Wealthier, like in my opinion, not in my opinion, like the numbers do the talking. You're not that far behind when you look at the remaining balance on the $30,000 discount versus the remaining balance on the 2-1 buy down. Yes, you financed more because you bought the property for $30,000 more, but then you paid $20,000 less in the first 24 months. So that's a real gain. That's a realized gain.
But what do you think they do with the $20,000?
I mean, come on. We're strategizing. We're talking about sacrifices. We're talking about what's going to happen.
What about the tax offset? So $20,000, if they're at a 25% tax bracket.
Here's the crazy
That's
thing.
another $5,000 in taxes offset.
Well, actually, and I don't know how it works, but this is a seller credit to the buyer. The amortization schedule is the amortization schedule. So even though the buyer is paying less, they're paying the discounted rate. The actual full payment being made is the 5.625% payment. So therefore,
So they still get the tax?
I believe
they get
so.
the same tax?
I believe so.
Oh, we should check into that.
So the 1098 is going to be, the 1098 is the document that you get from the lender that says it's a sum of all the mortgage interest that you paid.
Okay.
So that it is what it is. Like, it's not going to be like, well, technically the seller gave a $30,000 credit, and so the buyer didn't really pay that much in interest. So we're going to do this like specialized math to make sure that our 1098 is, this, because at the end of the day, it's a seller credit to the buyer. It's the buyer's money.
So in summary, Jodie's saying that let's not talk about the tax thing because it works out. She thinks it works out to be the same.
Right. So and I'm talking about opportunity cost. I'm talking about, like, yes, of course, and this is funny. It's a funny little paradigm. I mean, so like we're a broker, and we work with lenders, right? That and they create their own little policies and guidelines and whatever policies and procedures.
So that means the lending world's interesting. So they're brokers, which means they don't just work for bank of whatever. And just only lend to that.
Right.
They can say, well, who's giving this rate? Who has a special home buyer discount for veterans? Or they can pick and choose, which I tend to like better.
And it changes on the day.
It changes on the day. So that's what a broker is versus a banker, right?
Right. So like our job as a broker is to get the absolute best for our buyer at all costs, period. Versus when we were a mortgage banker, we were employed by the bank.
Right.
Our job, of course, is to sell our product.
Right.
So there was a lot less. It was easier,
Yeah.
and we made more money, but it wasn't ultimately the best for the buyer. So
Okay.
that's, yeah. But my point about this little funny story is that the rules that we have to follow that are built out by these like banks that think that they're all that in a bag of chips, they set up these like processes where it's like, do you think that I'm dumb? Like
what? What are you saying?
like the way that we have to like quality and compliance.
Okay.
Okay, so they'll make us do a certain thing where we have to fill out this form and submit it. And it's like, we know they qualify. Like, we wouldn't lock the rate, upload the file, submit the loan, and do all this stuff, crossing our fingers and hoping that they qualify. We've already done the math.
Well,
we know the
people,
income.
I've had that. They do. Lenders will do that.
Right.
So I've
and
been
so that's
victim.
my point.
I've been victim to it.
I know.
Yeah.
So my point is that these banks or these like upper management people create these policies because they're assuming the worst, right? They're just assuming that we're all effing idiots and that we don't know how to like structure a file.
So what does this get to? Like they can ultimately afford the higher rate? Is that the end?
No, my point is that you're assuming that people are just going to be completely reckless and that they're going to be like, oh my God, I'm saving $12,000 and now it's going to result me to nothing.
I'm not being insulting to our fans and followers. I treat myself and my own personal wealth the same way. If I have a certain amount of money burning a hole in my pocket, depending on the level, right? If it's a young person, they're like, Derek, I saved up $5,000. What do I do with it to grow it? Like one of our agents did recently. Yeah. And I was like, honestly, bury it in a coffee can and learn how to help people buy more houses. That's the highest use of your brain right now. Because then you'll increase your earning ability. But for someone at our level, if we have a certain amount of cash laying around, I think we should lock it into an investment. Of course, have your rainy day fund and have your cushion. Right. But I don't think it should be in my pocket because I tend to, every day I'm like, I deserve a truck.
Right.
I deserve a Ford Lightning, right?
Right.
I work hard. Every day I think that. Literally like every day.
Right. I mean,
that money needs to get out of my pocket.
100%.
So in my method,
right.
Not just that I'm insulting that all these people below me can't handle their money. No, same with me. I would rather get the $30,000 discount so that it's like locked in and then I have to make my payments. And then one day when I sell the house, I got $30,000 more than I otherwise did.
But it's not going to be $30,000.
Yes, it will.
It won't.
If you buy a house for $1 million versus buying it for $970, whenever you sell it for 1.1, you have $30,000 more in one situation than the other.
So what about reconciliations? I mean, what about all of the smaller amount of payout that you did within the first 24 months? That means nothing?
It's still more under my situation. The math still works out in my favor rather than yours slightly, but it's locked in a safe place. It's like it's in a safe place.
I know. I mean, and at the end of the day, when I'm talking to people and I'm talking to them about their budget and their affordability, and they know that they'll be able to afford the third year, but heck, if I can be $1,000 less for the first 12 months, I need to be there.
I do think. I bet you if we open this up to the comment section, which we always are doing, like please comment as much as you can. I think most people probably agree with Jodie. Like, most people are like, give me that $4,000 a month instead of $5,000 a month for a year.
Right.
And then when it refis, I'll be at $4,000 again, and then I will have always been at $4,000.
The problem is,
what if they can't refi?
If they can't refinance, then they know, eyes wide open, that coming into the third year, they're gonna have that full payment.
Just because I know today. Doesn't mean that my knowing is true in 24 months.
Right. It doesn't.
Could become untrue.
It could, right.
But what is true is if I take that $5,000 a month payment today and commit to it, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that people have a lot of things that are coming up. They have a lot of debts that are going to be paid off in the future. They have a lot of changes that are going to happen. So my wife isn't working right now, but in about 2 years, guess what? My 2-year-old is going to be in school, and so then my wife will go back to work, and now we're going to have a higher income. Now that $5,000 payment makes so much more sense to us. So yeah, we want to do the $4,000 and then the $45,000. Or I know for a fact,
you said it before, kids childcare is going away.
Childcare is going away, or
Like,
I'm gonna get a raise, or I'm gonna start. I'm gonna transition into bigger commissions.
I think.
Or,
Yeah, but that's a transition to bigger commissions. Who knows? I guess
yeah,
depends. Like medical sales, maybe you're gonna start selling the heart stuff instead of the brain. Like, there's two things exist. Jodie and I, like, she's just positive and optimistic naturally, and I'm a little more pessimistic and scrutinizing, and that's valuable. It's valuable at both. Even with like Mahe, she's a little more positive, and I'm a little more like, who's trying to screw me right now? And that's good. That's what you want in your financial advising team. Not that we're financial advisors, but and so there's that, but also the conversations you have. I guess we're having similar conversations, but I've like coached our team to always like, we do a lot of virtual buying.
Yeah.
So a lot of why clients love us is because we're like negative. We're like, oh, look at these cabinets. They're not good. And they're like, dang, I could buy with these people virtually.
Right.
Like they're up and up. But your conversations, I could see, correct me if I'm wrong, they tend to be like, well, we're coming to this point in life and we want to get this loan with you, Jodie, because we're finally at a point of blank. But like, it seems to be like forward progress.
Yeah.
It's not, we're sharing the same client in the same moment in their life, but I think the conversations are a little more like, yeah, the payment is going to go away. I am getting a raise. That's why we're buying this house. All these things, right? Whereas we also sell homes where it's like death, divorce, disease, delinquent taxes, all the D's for selling, right? So I think your experience is a little more congruent to like, these positive things are going to happen over the next 2 years.
Right.
Yeah. And whereas I think like, no, you're probably going to lose your job. And you're gonna get divorced.
When you talk about that, I think one of your biggest issues with it, aside from just the wealth strategy, is or the wealth mindset. The wealth mindset is that a lot of agents are talking about it, and that a lot of agents are utilizing it as a crutch, and that they are not necessarily giving the full disclosure. And so it's more like, hurry up, just get in the house, because don't worry, it's 2% lower for the first year. Don't worry, you're all good.
I hate that. Yeah, you know me.
You hate that. And so
if it's like the whole industry saying it, like, how do we move towards a sale? When rates were 2%, the whole industry is saying a certain thing. And then when they're 5%, they're saying a certain thing. Like, they're like, when I bought a house in the 80s, rates were 17%. And I'm like, no one cares.
Yeah.
That's
because
irrelevant
houses were $26,000.
Yeah, that's irrelevant to me right now. It's relevant to your clients. And so now you're right. When people are saying, but I can get you a 2-1 buy down. And I know that sometimes they're not having this elaborate conversation. I just feel like the bar and the standard of conversation is too low. Like, you're right.
Right, because
2-1 buy down, buy a house so I can get paid.
Right. Like, don't worry, you're paying this much less. But what we're doing, and what any good lender really is doing, is right. They're breaking it down. They're comparing amortization schedules. Mm-hmm. They're talking about potential refinances, the costs associated with refi, because refinances aren't free.
You can build it into the refi, but also it's not free. And
yeah, it's still not free.
Typically, you reset to 30, especially if it was that recent.
Right,
yeah.
All that stuff, right? Yeah. And so we are making those comparisons, and we spend a lot of time on budget. And it's like I explained to them that I do qualifications based on gross income, which is what you get paid before taxes. And at the end of the day, do you get paid gross? That's what I ask them. And they're like, no, we don't get paid gross. It's like, okay, so let's work a budget off of your net income and see realistically what you can actually afford. And so at the end of the day, it's just like it's the same concept of like, should I do 20% down or should I do 10? Because in that conversation, you do see the value of doing 10% down, even though the payment's going to be higher, and they have the money, they have the liquidity, right? So that's still liquidity that they're not dumping into the house because they can afford a higher monthly payment. It's similar to when you buy at a higher price point, a higher purchase price, because you want the 2-1 buy down.
I hate that.
So why do you hate it so much?
I hate that.
I don't hate it. It's
because
numbers.
You're gonna exit one day. So now you're saying
you have to exit one day.
The house is worth $1 million. We've established house worth $1 million, and then now you're gonna buy it $1,030,000 so that they can hopefully it appraises.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
Wait, no, I'm not saying that.
Oh, okay.
They're not gonna buy it $30,000 more than it's worth. I'm saying like they're gonna buy it at $1 million and they're getting the $30,000 or whatever.
Okay.
And then or they're gonna buy it at $970,000. I mean, we might be saying the same thing.
I thought you were saying buy it $1,030,000 so that you can get this credit.
No. I'm saying
okay.
I'm saying at the end of the day, the net difference to the seller being zero. If there was no difference to the seller, and in one option you're getting a discounted purchase price, but you're paying higher. So like, I mean, you're paying like $800 more a month from day one. Then
How many people out there think I'm crazy? Like, Derek, you're telling us to pay $800 more a month? But it's because I want you to lock in $30,000 in equity.
but you're gonna earn 24,000 of that back in the first 24 months.
But here's the thing. Here's the other thing.
And that's real life. That's
what if at the
real life
12
money.
month, not 24,000, 18, right?
12
and
plus-
then half.
Yeah.
18,000
Yeah,
versus
okay.
30.
Okay.
So you're going to earn 60% of it back. So I'm still 40, but it's not exactly. There's tons of math that can go into it. What if you can refi? What if rates? What if Biden needs to get reelected, or China sends a missile and now like, well, we need to stimulate the economy and rates go to 4% from 6% down to 4% at your 12-month mark. And now what if that 6,000 is not realized? You only saved 12, and some of that went to Disneyland. So I'd rather have it locked into the house, you making your payments. And then you can refi whenever you're going to refi. Or if you want to get super creative, you can start to learn how to use your house as a bank and a first position, line of credit. That's a whole different masterclass. But you have other ways to reduce your housing burden. And if given the option, if you can afford, let's settle the argument on this. Maybe we'll see if you agree. If they are comfortable with the $5,000 a month in lieu of the $4,000 or the $4,200, if they're comfortable, like, yeah, well, it's good, we got $50,000 in passive income, then take my method, because maybe you can refi early, or no, under no circumstances you would still go 2-1.
Not under no circumstances, but under a circumstance where
Then when would you ever do it my way?
when someone doesn't care about the monthly savings.
The month to month doesn't matter because they have so much money.
They were like, oh, I actually budgeted for 7,000. So the fact that our payment with or without the 2-1 is 5,000, I don't care.
Okay.
So for someone like that, of course, you're going to want a $30K purchase price.
$30K lower purchase price.
$30K lower purchase price.
Yeah.
That's the scenario that works beautifully.
What about this?
And the reality is that's not the scenario that exists very often.
I was listening to Joe Rogan today. This guy was talking about how he started to feed this wild raven. And he's like, now the raven's his friend. When you feed wild animals, sometimes they're not as good hunter. If you get used to 4,000 a month, you may not be as equipped to get to 5,000. Now, at least it's happening in 2 stages. It goes from 4,000 to 4,500 to 5, but you acclimate to this behavior.
Right.
It's like we've been eating at Roy's twice a month.
What will happen? They'll adjust.
The raven might die.
They'll pivot. They'll pivot.
Positive versus negative.
But that is what really will happen.
Not everyone though.
Yeah, it will. I mean, they're gonna be like,
You come from people that are responsible. My family
is not responsible.
Your family's done better for themselves on average than my family.
The children.
Even
this
look
level,
your mom's house.
This level.
My mom died in a trailer. Look at your mom's house.
Okay.
I've had family members call me to ask for money, yet I see them blowing money on social media. I don't have this faith that people just get used to a $4,000 payment and can pivot to a $5,000 payment. So I think that's where that comes from.
The reason why I feel like they will is because it's a forced savings. It's just going to happen. They already had the wherewithal to afford the 5K. They already did. And so in years 1 and 2, they get to whatever it may be, whatever you want to call it. They can either be the super risk averse type and they're like, no, honey, we're going to put that money automatically into this new account that we're creating. And so when we fast forward 12 months, we're going to have 12K in that account because we're going to direct that money there. Okay, there's those super risk averse. And then there's going to be the other side of the spectrum that's going to be like, heck, we get to go to Disneyland this year. Heck, my grandma's turning 102. We're going to Vegas with her
Which
this
bucket
year.
do you think has more people?
I mean, not
3, 2.
Yeah, so there's gonna be and
Which bucket do you think has more people?
Yeah, they're gonna spend. But what does that mean? What is that worth to you? Like, what is that worth to someone? Happiness, enjoyment, memories.
It's true.
Like it, love it, want it, need it. Right?
Yeah.
They get to do a couple more of the love it buckets.
Because they could die before refi time comes.
Right.
This is true.
So they get to do a couple more of the love it buckets.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of how we, like, when I'm talking to them about breaking down those categories.
Yeah.
Like, we don't care about wants and like and want. We care about love it and need it. You need food. You need to pay tuition.
That's a profound way to put it, and I won't contest that. So in the end, let's close it up like this. We're not at a total point of agreement, but it's a great conversation, and I hope that people at home enjoy this, because whether this video ends up being 15 or 30 minutes, we're not saying marry the house and date the rate, which smells like commission breath. We're having a conversation. It's detailed. And I think that's the most valuable way to talk about these things. And there's going to be a number of people that we send this to reference this program in the coming months before maybe it goes away, maybe it comes back at some time. I want to bring one more thing into it. You were raised in Kailua.
Yep.
I was raised in Ewa. We do a ton of business in both, and relocators, local people, like number of reasons why a lot of people move to both. I no longer live in Ewa. You no longer live in Kailua.
Right.
How come? How come you didn't move back to Kailua?
So, well, my parents relocated when I was in college. So there was not really anywhere to go back to. But also in that time period, Kailua really changed.
So you lived in like Kahala. Hawaii, did you live in Hawaii? You live Kahala, like East Honolulu, not really. You know, Kahala is its own thing. And then now you live Kaneohe.
Right.
But you didn't go back to Kailua.
Right.
But objectively, Kailua is amazing.
I don't like
the
it.
beach
it's way too populated. There's a lot of traffic. It's like way, for me personally.
It's not what it was.
Yeah, it's just not what it was. It's like almost like painful for me to like just see it so developed.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what I grew up in.
Is there any level of even if it were the same, you would still go, or it's just like
no? If it was
almost
the
feels
same,
like a digression to go back home for anyone, whether it's Montana.
No. My dream goal was always to buy my house back that I was raised in.
Enchanted Lake.
Enchanted Lakes.
Yeah.
Alahaki Street. And
Okay.
I wouldn't want to live there anymore.
Yeah.
Not because I love Enchanted Lakes.
Almost feels like it's frozen in time.
Enchanted Lakes is frozen in time.
Yeah.
But you still gotta get there. I would live in Enchanted Lakes. I would never live in Kailua Town, like that, whatever that other like area closer to Lanikai it would be called.
Lama Track, Kailua Beach side, whatever. It's just
What is the A?
Aikahi.
Aikahi. Yes.
You wouldn't go Aikahi.
Right.
I would almost tease Kailua before. Like it wasn't a place that I wasn't like not fond of it, but also just like, that's Kailua. It's not even in Hawaii. But now that I spend so much time in Kailua, Mahi's boyfriend's in Kailua, so she's over there all the time. We sell a lot of homes in Kailua. I'm like, sometimes I think about moving to Kailua. Like I told my wife, like, I wouldn't mind like a lot of people walking and biking to and from the beach and this downtown square. Because when we lived in California, there was no downtown, or there was a bunch of like places like that. You lived in the Bay, right? So like whether it be Burlingame, Redwood City, Palo Alto, Alameda, parts of Oakland, there's that thing. Kailua is like the only town in Hawaii that has that outside of like Metro Honolulu.
Yeah.
And then people are, the weather's better. It's less rainy in parts of Kailua than like Kaneohe, Huimanu. And then just the whole thing, I'm like, I see why people want to be
I mean,
here.
I
and
see
the
why
beach
people want
and
to do it. The
sunrises and
yeah, and the breakfasts and the brunches and the shopping,
Yeah, like,
and biking. Like, oh, let's all get on our bikes and like meet at the park. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and the dog parks. I mean,
why do you say it like patronizing?
I'm not patronizing, but I would like that lifestyle too.
I see. I sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna move to Kailua.
Yeah, I could see it.
And then I'm gonna like see if my family will still come visit me. That's how I think about it sometimes.
The problem is just it's so populated. It's so trafficy. Like you want to go to Boots and Chemos and you gotta wait an hour. Like you want to go to Sunnyside or whatever that whatever that breakfast little spot is, and there's like 35 people in line. It's like, no thanks. Like I'm not gonna do that.
But Kailua's amazing, and we see why everyone would live there. Jodie's like skewed because it's not what I grew up with.
Yeah.
Me, I'm actually the opposite. Like I don't know what it used to be, but now that I'm always there, man, I kind of want to move there. So who knows? Maybe I am going to move there. When I first moved to Hawaii, we were in Makakilo. Then we moved to Ewa, but kind of similar, Everybody went to Campbell. For years, I would tell my wife, if we're moving to Ewa, I'm not moving back home. Like I'll stay in California before I move to Ewa. And then when we came home, we found a place in Mililani, and we kind of become like Mililanians.
Yeah.
But when we were buying our house, we started to look in Ewa because like, man, this is a nice house for our price point.
Right.
And then I talked to elementary Ryan and JC. You remember Ryan and JC? So they met at elementary because they taught there, and I asked them, oh, you're moving to Mililani for the schools? And they were like, no, why you say that? And I'm like, it's Mililani. Like, ever Mililani? And they're like, no, it's because our parents live here and they can help with childcare. In fact, there's some merit about Ewa schools versus Mililani. Like, and I was like, interesting for you to say that because she taught at Malka where my wife taught. And she's like, some couple of the Ewa schools could even be seen as better. And I was like, what? So, and then we started looking at houses, like such a nice house close to the beach. It doesn't rain so much. All the sidewalks and walls aren't black from all the mildew. And I could like, if I had an hour left in the evening, 6 p.m. in the summer, I could go surf still. And we thought about it. We still live in Mililani, but I wouldn't move back there. And I think for me, it was just because like my childhood is, a little, not rough in terms of like my parents or my dad or anything, but, had scraps and had like, you got to watch where you're going and stuff.
Yeah.
Eva's a little different now. And all my friends who still live there, they're like, brah, it's not like when we went to school.
Right.
And we sell houses there, and it's just Ewa is so dominated by all the new construction that it's kind of the new construction place rather than the plantation field place when we were kids.
Right.
Would I still move back there now? I think about it. I think I would go Makakilo or Kapolei. There's like a charter school. If I'm gonna go all the way out there, like what was your thought of Ewa Kapolei growing up? You probably hardly ever went there, huh?
I think the
soccer or something.
I mean, the first time I ever went there was in high school.
Really?
Yeah.
In high school?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's because we like played Ewa Beach. We play Campbell. I always call it Ewa Beach. We play Campbell.
I shouldn't even know the name of the high school.
And
no, but you know what? I didn't know a lot of things too.
Yeah. You didn't know Iolani was the best school in the state.
I still don't know if Iolani is the best school in the state.
Yeah, so I didn't even know what Ewa Beach was until soccer took me there.
Okay.
And then it's hot, and the girls were big and physical. and
you're saying it from an athlete's perspective.
Oh yeah, I'm saying physically. Like we were, I was playing soccer against them.
You guys are undersized.
So, right. When I was going to college, I got recruited mainland. My grandma didn't want me to go.
Okay.
So she said, if you don't go, I'll buy 2 of the new properties.
Oh yeah.
In Ewa, and that is when she was trying to she's like, I'll buy you them and they'll be yours, like free and clear. And at that time, to me, that meant nothing to me because I was like, Ewa Beach? Why would I want property in Ewa Beach? It makes no sense. I'm going to San Francisco to play soccer.
Those houses are what, $1 million a piece right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would be sitting on $2 million properties free and clear. It's just I always think about that and I'm like, oh my, she was really onto something.
Right.
Yeah. But I love Ewa Beach now.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. And Kapolei and Makakilo. I don't spend very much time on that side of the island.
You love everything.
I do. I love life.
Yeah, I love life too. So, in summary, who's more likely to move back to their hometown? Me to Ewa or you to Kailua?
I think me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You would?
Uh-huh.
Enchanted Lake though. Gotta be Enchanted Lake.
It's gotta be Enchanted Lakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keolu?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Enchanted
Hills,
Hills.
Okay.
And then there's that other neighborhood in Kailua that's it's so confusing to get there. Yes.
Oh.
I'll move there.
That's its own thing.
I mean, I'll be the Rock's
Monowili?
neighbor.
The Rock lives there? Or he has a house there?
He has.
Did you know that?
He had a house there.
He had a house there?
Because he literally bought the house for the gym. Because there was some sort of gym in a house.
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, I need the gym, so I'll buy the house.
Wow.
I mean, I could live there. I could live in Monowili.
I was gonna ask Monowili.
I played a lot of soccer.
Monowili is basically Kaneohe anyway. It's like a Hui Manu jumped over something.
Yeah. It's like something happened. They never got the memo.
Yeah.
They never got the Kailua memo. And I think a lot of those people are original. Which I just...
There's a lot of OGs in Monowili, yeah.
But
When you're windward and you move west side or you're leeward and you move windward, it feels like you're almost halfway going to a new island. Mm-hmm. And so I almost want to disrupt life that way and go to Kaneohe.
Yeah, you should go to Kaneohe.
Or
I don't think you would. I can't see you guys moving back to Ewa Beach. Nothing's wrong with Ewa Beach.
Or I would move around here. I'd move Aiea or something up in one of the Pro Estates or Royal Summit. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Jodie's more likely to move home. A lot of active duty people and veterans are going to watch this. If you want to speak to one of our past clients who's bought virtually, pick a letter. Pick J and I'll introduce you to Jane and Johnny or whatever. Pick M and we'll introduce you to Megan, right? We'll introduce you to one of our 100 clients that have bought virtually. You can ask them how the experience was, if the home was what they thought, if it smelled the way they thought it would smell, if the neighborhood was the way they thought it would be. If that's something you're considering, talk to some of our past clients. We'll make that introduction.
Yeah.
I would want that. Like, I'm the type of guy that would ask that if it weren't offered.
A lot of our virtual tours will send over to give you a feel of the neighborhood. So, real quick, here's a sample of one of those videos for you to look at. You can have a drastic difference in style of home from your luxury beachfront on one side and then directly across a complete tear down. But there is always the possibility, to have sort of a mixed bag as far as what your neighbors and your direct neighborhood's going to look like.